So this is The Dharma Bums by Jack Kerouac. And, I wanted to try another book of his because, of course, I think most of us, we have all read The Road and we saw the potential there. But in this one, The Dharma Bums, it starts out all right. We have this character, he is on a freight train. He's a bum. He's with another bum, and we finally understand that for some strange reason, pretty much all of the bums or vagabonds or whatever you want to call them, all of them understand, Buddhism or Hinduism. Most of them have, like these Buddhist prayers on them, and they recite them, and they practice certain principles of the Eastern belief. Uh, I think pretty much at the beginning, the first bum he meets, he practices, a sort of yoga where he stands on his head, and of course, this to me seems incredibly unlikely. I mean, every single person he meets, is into Buddhism, knows about Buddhism, knows prayers, knows these Zen masters, and it is a bit over exaggerated, over aggrandized, But I understand that back in the day, in the early 50s, these Eastern religious and philosophical beliefs, they were just stampeding, they were snowballing all over America, and of course, this was the precursor to, of course, the hippy dippy movement, where, things just went off the rails, right? So I guess that is why pretty much everybody in this book knows about Buddhism and practices, these Eastern beliefs, right? But I thought this book would take us in another direction. I thought that we would follow this protagonist, Ray or Smith, whatever his name is. I thought that we would follow him. We would get more of his background. I thought that he would go, across the country. I thought that he would move along and find new people, that he would befriend other bums, and maybe that he would teach them about Buddhism, and they would form this club of homeless people called the Dharma Bums. That was my presumption when I first started reading this book, but this is not the case. Uh, we are presented with a few characters that are, let's call it, avatars for, you know, uh, people in the beatnik generation. We have, of course, Ginsberg, Neil Cassidy, uh, maybe, I don't know if William Burroughs is represented here, but there are a lot of people, let's call them stars from the beatnik generation, that make an appearance in this book. And for me personally, it wasn't that exciting of a read. It just gets blander and blander. There's just this long portion of the book where they talk about going up a mountain. They are on their way to the mountain. They start climbing the mountain. They're in the middle of the mountain, and then they are on the top of the mountain, and then we have to follow them down the mountain. And I get why this is. It is a sort of parable for, the Zen apprentices that go up the mountain and become masters, whatever. It was dull. And then after that, our protagonist, Ray Smith, he goes on adventuring again, meeting other Dharma bums, whatever. Like I said, it isn't this that exciting. You're not immersed. I get it that when this was published, maybe, Buddhism and such, they were, the talk of the town, the fad and the trend of the day. But now, it's just, I don't get why they're so excited. They just traded one belief for another, and of course, this belief did not save them in the end, because nothing can save you in the end. You know, of course, we have this Eastern belief that is more that shies away from the materialistic. It's all about letting go. It's all about defeating the ego. And of course, it's about compassion and kindness and trying to diminish the pain, all human suffering, not just human suffering, but suffering in general for every living being. And that is a nice slogan to have. But of course, you must understand that such a thing cannot be done. You cannot. I mean, I think it's obvious that most of us, we can't even remove our own suffering, let alone help somebody else with their suffering. I think that is impossible. I think that is a pipe dream. But anyway, so this book, unfortunately, doesn't really have a lot to say. Nothing really important happens. The characters are whatever. Everybody's practicing orgies, and they're taking drugs, and they're drinking, and at the same time they're drinking tea, and they're always in lotus positions, and people are coming and going. And of course, this is the pure example that even this was a fad, and that no matter what philosophical ideology or whatever comes along, it will be turned into some sort of spectacle, a trend, a fashion statement, and it will lose its, polish, its glow eventually, which of course happened with Buddhism and everything else that came after. Not to say that this is a bad book in particular. I mean, it does what it does. It's like this flow of consciousness. Kerouac was famous for writing his books on this fucking roll of paper, toilet paper, or whatever, right? And it's just, no corrections, no editing whatsoever. And that's fine, but it's just, it doesn't vibe with me, right? And to really show just how disappointed I was, right after this one, I wanted to read the Book of Awakening, or the Book of Waking, another one of his books. But then I said, you know what? I better switch it up. I better read something else, because it was too dull. It was too stagnant. It was too bland, right? So I chose another book to read after this one, right? Nothing really stands out. There's nothing in the beginning, middle, and end to really capture your attention. The protagonist isn't something special. Uh, he joins this Firewatch committee, right? And he becomes yet again this sort of sage, this monk, surrounded by nature. He is by himself. There's a lot of men in this book. There are a lot of Zen masters mentioned, and these Chinese poets that wrote about the mountains and the rivers, and oh boy, uh, that Zen stuff, which personally, uh, I never really liked the sort of sarcastic, belligerent tone that is in Zen. I never liked it, and there are really nice, funny examples in this where some character might say, "Oh, you see, the Zen master was asked by his disciples the answer to this, and the master said nothing and then laughed," or the master slapped the disciple, and the disciple that was slapped was enlightened, and that disciple became a master as well. It's this cheeky, tongue-in-cheek, impertinent, uh, really stale type of humor that Zen has. I wouldn't call it necessarily cynical. It's an asshole type of ideology, or a type of behavior and a type of thinking that I just really don't appreciate, right? You go to ask your master, and your master literally takes a dump on you, and then you're like, oh well, I'm enlightened now. So that is my uh, take on this Zen. Whatever. Moving on, and what I want to leave you with is, I always really thought about, why is the Buddha mostly portrayed as this really fat fuck that is really happy, right? And of course, there are so many interpretations, but my interpretation is like, of course, you see, the Buddha realized that everything is a joke, that life is a bad joke, that everything here is an illusion. And so there are only two options left for a person that is awake, enlightened, which is you got to step away from it and deny any type of interference or involvement. Ergo, you become this sage that is, you know, isolated and alienated in his like cave or whatever, or you can pick the hedonistic side and just be a glutton and eat and drink and take pleasure in whatever there is, because at the end of the day, who cares? And I think that is what the fat Buddha, is trying to represent. Uh, you know, take it or leave it. The decision is yours. But I think the Buddha decided, you know what, fuck this. I'm just gonna enjoy the time that I have here. And so what if nothing matters? So what if everything is meaningless? I'm just gonna enjoy these illusions by myself or whatever. I think that is clear, right? Because if you deny everything and become this stoic that takes no pleasure in anything, I mean, you either become this numbed shell of a person, or you get infected and corrupted by despair, right? So there has to be some sort of balance. And another thing that let's just say I didn't appreciate in this book is just how overhyped and excited and enthusiastic all of these characters are about, Buddhism, accepting the nothingness, being nothing. We are all nothing and we are all everything. And, just how joyous they are to recite these Zen Chinese poets, or these haikus. And yet, I have to say this again, haikus are lame. Okay, it's time for us to drop haikus. Haikus are nonsense. They're lame, and they're goofy. Okay, they're just another fad. Whatever. I have no problem with poetry, but haikus, for some reason, they just aren't to my taste. I think they're a bit too, uh, you know, they're a bit too superficial. They're a bit too, you know, arrogant. They're a bit too. I mean, you really can't say a lot in a couple of lines, right? What is it? The 5-9, the 5-7-5 rule, whatever. Right. So all of these characters, they're so overhyped for Zen and Buddhism and the knowledge and being enlightened, and they keep mentioning all of these, these these Indian or Chinese saints or disciples or masters that achieved greatness, the spiritual awakening and greatness, and they use a lot of these terms of Buddhism, and of course, you know it's just a bit too much for your average reader. Even I failed to understand some of these terms, and it takes you out of the immersion. You know, it's just a bit silly that these adults take it so seriously. That is what this book really captured, is that all of these grown ass adults take this ideology, whatever it may be, so seriously. And one guy, Jaffe, I think his name is, he actually goes to Japan to, practice in a temple with a master. And I'm just like, bro, this is way too much. Calm down. Don't take this world and anything too seriously, because in the end, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what you believe, what you do. Okay, I think this is the enlightenment. This is the nirvana, the satori, whatever you want to call it, that everything passes, nothing matters, it is all pointless, aimless, meaningless, and you should take it easy. Sit in your corner like the Buddha and relax, because everything will go away in the end, and we will go away, and we will turn to dust, and it will be as if we never even existed, and that should be embraced, right? That should be embraced. I mean, sitting around and meditating and drinking chamomile tea and sitting in a lotus position, that's all right, but you have to say that this will not do anything in the long run. And of course, reality showed that even this Buddhism, Hinduism, which strive for compassion and kindness and ending suffering, didn't do shit, didn't really help anything, didn't really uh, lessen the blow of suffering that we all experience as, mortal, flawed beings. And of course, the hype died down. All of these Western beliefs were flushed down the toilet like everything else, and then something else came along, and of course, that was flushed down the toilet as well, because this is an endless cycle. This is the endless rabbit hole, the serpent eating its own tail. Round and round we go. We never realize that nothing in this world will save us in any way, right? So this has been the Dharma Bums by Jack Kerouac. I was expecting a little bit more, but I appreciated how Jack Kerouac showed just how zealous and even fanatical these characters were about, Buddhism and Zen and what have you, because you cannot let any type of belief turn you into a follower, into a believer. I think that at the end of the day, you should think for yourself, and no matter how good something sounds, and let me tell you, how it is presented here, Buddhism and so on, it sounds really neat. But you should still think for yourself, question everything, and never be fully captured and fully grasped by any type of belief. Because when you really embrace something, because you want to because you love what it has to say, you become, you become a crusader, you become a priest, instead of a skeptic or a doubter or a free thinker, right? I think that's the point here. No matter how wonderful something sounds, no matter how it caters to your, various beliefs, nothing should be embraced, you know, in its entirety. Because if you do that, then you become just another priest, just another disciple, and you will be devoured by it, right? Devoured by it. And soon you will not see all of the flaws and defects of your ideology, So that's about it. Jack Kerouac, the Dharma Bums. I was expecting more, but, at least it was a quick read. So if you didn't know, and if you want to support your boy, I'm a writer as well. I got a couple of books on Amazon. The link will be down below. And, thanks for watching. See ya.